welcome back to Football Picks at TalkingSports.tv. I'm Marty York, along with one of the world's most renowned football handicappers, Uncle Ben himself, Uncle Ben from UncleBen'sFootball.com. And Uncle Ben, this is the moment we all wait for, because this is when you tell us who you like in your picks. And this is the first time that we're not going through an entire schedule, because we only have the wild card games this weekend, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. The first of which is on Saturday at 4:35 Eastern. Kansas City Chiefs, the team that should have beaten the San Diego Chargers last week on a late field goal to allow the Steelers to get in, but instead they let the Chargers get in. Kansas City Chiefs have had a terrific year, one of the most amazing, remarkable rebounding years I can ever recall. Went from also-rans and really dregs of the NFL into contending team under Andy Reid, the coach, and with Alex Smith at quarterback. Indy, with Andrew Luck, is a 2.5-point favorite over the visiting Chiefs Saturday, 4:35. Uncle Ben, how do you see this game shaping up?
Yes, well, Marty, the Chiefs really came out of the gate this year 9-0. Nobody was expecting that, but I'd still say the Chiefs take the prize for being the smoke and mirror specialist of the NFL this year, Marty. They lost the yardage battle by 83 yards per game during the second half of the season, which was the second worst margin in the entire NFL, by the way.
Wow.
And the worst of any of the playoff teams. And get this, by the way, the Kansas City Chiefs are 1-11 against the spread in their last 12 playoff games, including 0-7 straight up and against the spread their last 7. You also can't overlook how these teams came down the stretch, Marty. Like we said, the Chiefs started out 9-0, but they were only 2-5 straight up in their last 7 games following that 9-0 start. And Indianapolis closed pretty well, going 3-0 straight up and against the spread in blowout fashion their last 3 games. This team has looked very strong. If you look back at the history between the Colts and the Chiefs, going back to 1990, they played 14 times. The Colts have won 12 out of the 14 games, Marty, and they've covered in 11 out of the 14 games. So, including 7-0 straight up and against the spread off a win. Obviously, they've won their last game. So, things are pointing to the Colts here. Also, Kansas City head coach Andy Reid, he hasn't been able to tame the ponies either, Marty. He's 1-4 straight up lifetime, 0-5 against the spread against the Colts in his career. When I add all this up, okay, and with Luck on their side, and I'm not talking about Luck like in Las Vegas, I'm talking about Andrew Luck. I like the Indianapolis Colts to keep rolling along here, minus 2.5 points at home against a Kansas City Chiefs team. Like I said, Marty did it with smoke and mirrors the second half of the season. Granted, they came out of the gate early, but they played a lot of teams that weren't so good at the beginning of the season. Due to their poor schedule last year, they had a soft schedule this year. And I just think the Colts are going in the right direction, and they got the best player on the field in Andrew Luck. I like the Indianapolis Colts this week to advance in the playoff tournament, minus 2.5 points, playing at home in Indianapolis.
All right. Later on Saturday at 8:10 Eastern Time, the New Orleans Saints with Drew Brees visit the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles are 2.5-point favorites in this game. I guess, earlier on, there were some skeptics about Chip Kelly as a head coach in the NFL. Sometimes college coaches have a difficult time making the transition to the NFL. But Chip Kelly, even if you don't like the guy's mannerisms, you have to credit him, because the Eagles, they lost their quarterback at the beginning of the season, Michael Vick, a guy that you already had described as someone who maybe should have been put out to pasture. Nick Foles took over, and Nick Foles has had an incredible season, understanding Chip Kelly's offense. Sean Jackson and LaShawn McCoy provide an incredible 1-2 offensive punch. This is a team to be reckoned with. The Eagles, 2.5-point favorites over Jimmy Graham and Lance Moore and Colston and Thomas and on all those other guns that Drew Brees has to work with. Your thoughts on New Orleans at Philly, with Philly being a 2.5-point favorite?
Well, Marty, this is a game that I'm having a little difficulty with this one here. Again, couple of teams maybe going a bit in opposite directions, especially on the road and at home. The Eagles, they lost 14 games in a row at home coming into the season and after 2 games at home this year. Chip Kelly, like we said, I think he had a lot of pressure at the beginning of the season from the media to play Michael Vick, first of all, because, they signed this guy to a $100 million contract a few years. They'd like to maybe see him playing some football games, right? But it really didn't work out in the Chip Kelly offense. Nick Foles seems to be pretty much got that job sewn up now. He's looking pretty solid. Okay, he had probably the most outstanding performance in the NFL this year against the Oakland Raiders when he threw 7 touchdown passes and tied the all-time record. It was probably the single best game performance of the season. Not that factors in here, but he's just looking pretty solid. Chip Kelly sort of got it going now. They finished up much better at home, the Eagles, once they broke that 14-game losing streak. Now, on the flip side, the New Orleans Saints, great at home, 1-7 against the spread on the road, Marty. This team, they've lost 6 straight games on the road. I really can't get a handle on this game. You look at the offenses, like you said, McCoy, they seem to be clicking on all cylinders. They're the leading rushing team in the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles. Chip Kelly's a mastermind on offense, right, coming out of Oregon. Sean Payton's no slouch himself on the offensive side of the ball. Now, I am sort of leaning to the over in this one, Marty, but I have to wait to see what the weather's going to be like. Weather plays a huge factor in these games now. Can be. This is a night game, by the way, I believe, in Philadelphia, Saturday night. I would imagine it's going to be chilly there, but I don't know if there's going to be precipitation. I think the cold is not going to be so much of a factor for putting points on the board. But Drew Brees, when he gets into when the rain starts happening or sleet or snow, it becomes a little bit of a different situation for the over-unders. But I do like the over in this game, Marty, if the weather conditions are reasonable, like no precipitation. Not so worried about the temperatures. Not really into the side on this game. I think the New Orleans Saints have something to prove. Sean Payton, is a first-year head coach, by the way, Chip Kelly. Nick Foles, also not a rookie quarterback, first playoff game ever, though, playing against a savvy veteran like Drew Brees. I don't know. I have a tough time on the side on this one, Marty, but I do lean towards the over. If the weather conditions are right in this game, I do have selections on the other 2 games on Sunday, but this is a side. I just can't seem to get a handle on the side on this game, Marty, but I do like a little leaner on over the total with these 2 potent offenses playing for, an elimination game when these teams just seem to hold nothing, in the playbook back. I like to see some points on the board here Saturday night, like I said, if the weather conditions are favorable.
All right, so Uncle Ben, staying away from the side on the New Orleans, I should say, Philadelphia game, he's leaning towards the over if the weather cooperates on Saturday night. I like Philadelphia, and I like them a lot. I just want to throw that in there, and the reason is that...
Yes, I'd like to hear the reason, please.
The reason is what you just said about New Orleans and their difficulties on the road. This, to me, looks like a fish out of water, this team, when they're on the road. They have trouble outdoors. I don't know whether Drew Brees has lost some of his magic or whether defenses have finally understand or have come to understand what he does. But lately, when I see New Orleans on the road, they do not look good at all. No matter what, it's going to be cold in Philadelphia Saturday night. I do not think that augurs well for Drew Brees and his small hands and all of that. So I like Philadelphia a lot at home in this game. On Sunday, there are 2 games, 1:05 Eastern, San Diego at Cincinnati. San Diego got in there only because of Ryan's suck-up's blunder and because the refs blundered on that kick. Cincinnati is favored by 7 points. Uncle Ben, I got to know what you're thinking here. The Bengals have looked good lately.
Well, yeah, we talked about how the Chargers got in the earlier segment of the program. And, yeah, they made it, though, Marty, and they head to Cincinnati. And I say good luck with that because I've been on the Bengals pretty solid this year. And I can tell you that the Bengals are 8-0 straight up and against the spread playing at Paul Brown Stadium this year. They've scored 49, 41, 42, 42, and 34 points in their last 5 home games. Marty, that's a lot of points, okay? These teams played in Week 13 right here in San Diego, and the Bengals won that one 17-10, and I can tell you San Diego's defense couldn't play better than it did in that game. That was like their best game defensively, and it was a home loss. The Bengals, yeah, their offense, this change of pace running game they got with those 2 different style running backs, they're going to aim that right at the San Diego's run defense, Marty, which happened to be the worst run defense in the AFC this year, giving 4.7 yards per carry. And, that sets up well for Andy Dalton, keeps him in good down and distance situations, keeps him out of trouble, even though he did throw a couple of pickies last week to Baltimore early in that game, but he settled down quite nicely last week. They just scored 34 points against Baltimore without tight ends Tyler Eifert and Jermaine Gresham, and they're both slated to be back this week. It was a great finish by the Chargers, Marty. I give it to them with that, but I think it all comes to an end this week. Cincinnati continues to roll in their dominant fashion at home. They're just blowing teams out there. I don't see them blowing this game. Like I said, the Chargers, nice try, way to go. You're in the playoffs, but I think the Bengals are going to take them down this week. I'd like the Cincinnati Bengals just to blow them out at home, really. 2 touchdowns, maybe even 17-point victory. Take the Bengals minus the 7, Paul Brown Stadium this Sunday.
I couldn't agree with you more, Uncle Ben. I think it's going to be a very lopsided game, and I do expect a lot of Ben Jarvis Green and Giovanni Bernard. Those guys are good. Those guys are good backs, as you said. Also on Sunday, and I think I know where you're headed on this game based on some of your comments in our earlier segment. This is a 4:40 start Eastern Time wildcard game featuring the San Francisco 49ers at the Green Bay Packers, where Aaron Rodgers and company are 3-point underdogs, 3-point underdogs. So you can get a home dog here if you like it, and I think you do, don't you, Uncle Ben?
Well, Marty, there's some interesting points about this game. I mean, it's a classic matchup right here at Lambeau Field. These teams have played some great games through the years with all the great, quarterbacks that have played for these teams. But I just don't feel, Marty, that the Niners is as good as they were last year. Their defense is not as dominant, and Colin Kaepernick surely is not as sharp as he was last year. No one can deny that. And San Francisco's won in cover just 5 times in the last 19 showdowns between these two storied franchises, although head coach Jim Harbaugh is 3-0 straight up and against the spread against Mike McCarthy. So McCarthy's got something to prove there. But there's some interesting points about this. Super Bowl losers from the previous season, Marty, are 0-5 straight up and 0-4-1 against the spread since 1980 when they're opening their playoff games on the road the following season. So teams that lose the Super Bowl last year and maybe aren't quite as good and don't get that home game the following season don't fare well. They've never won a playoff game on the road in the opening round. I don't like that, Marty. That just bodes well for the Packers. There's also the serious revenge factor here for the Packers. They got blown out last year in the playoffs by the Niners in San Francisco, and then they headed back up their first week of the season this year, and they lost again. So I think there's a lot of, the revenge factor here for Green Bay is big, and they got their star quarterback back. But here's the 2 interesting things, Marty. 8-win teams that make the playoffs, which doesn't happen very often. 8-win teams just don't normally make the playoffs. But since the year 2000, it's happened 5 times. The 8-win teams are 5-0 against the spread, Marty, including 3-0 straight up and against the spread when playing at home.
Wow.
Okay. Also, but here's the real interesting one, and you talked about it. NFL playoff home dogs seeking revenge, okay, which the Packers are all those. That fits perfect here. Are 16-6 against the spread since 1980. And I just think with Aaron Rodgers back, and like I said, Eddie Lacy's carrying a lot more of the load for the Green Bay Packers this year, which they didn't really have a running game like forever. Hello? Now they've got Eddie Lacy. He can pound the ball pretty good. Takes the pressure off Aaron Rodgers. Play action comes into the factor. I like the man from Cheesehead. I like the Cheeseheads here, Marty. I do. I say take the Packers this week, plus 3 points at home on the frozen tundra. The forecast for this game, by the way, is somewhere near 0 degrees. Packer weather, boys. I like the Green Bay Packers to pull the upset this week and get revenge against the San Francisco 49ers and win the game outright.
Wow.
Take the Packers home.
There you go, folks. And you're right, Uncle Ben. Eddie Lacy has been a real steady addition to that Packers offense. I guess he's Rookie of the Year. He's been incredible.
Well, I don't know I haven't really thought about that, Marty, but I just think that, the Packers have a bit of, they're just a much more well-rounded team now. They're not as one-dimensional. They used to be pass only. Now they can run the ball. I like them to get it done, have revenge, playing at home. It's worked out well for them. Rodgers is back. He looked pretty good. He's got a week under his belt now. And I just think they're going to win this game. Okay, they got something to prove. They got revenge. I like the Packers in January on the frozen tundra at Lambeau Field.
All right, so there you go, folks. Let's just review quickly for you. Make sure you make note of these. Uncle Ben who, by the way, admittedly doesn't love wild card games traditionally. He's not, they're difficult, and he doesn't love them. But if you're going to go with anything, you might as well go with Uncle Ben's picks, because he just puts a lot of effort into finding out for you what works. And he's suggesting that if you're going to go with these games, take Indianapolis, lay the 2.5 points. If you want to bet on the Philadelphia game, he's suggesting you go over if the weather cooperates on Saturday night. He likes Cincinnati minus the 7 on Sunday, and he likes them in a blowout. And then for his upset of the week, he likes Green Bay. He thinks they're going to win outright over the visiting San Francisco 49ers. And you heard his facts. They all sound good. They're difficult to argue with. So there you go. Those 4 picks for your wild card pleasure this weekend. That's it for that segment. We're not done yet, though. No. We got some bowl games to talk about, and we'll do that right after this. Don't go away.